So back on there on the TUEs, so people are using TUEs, and TUEs, in my opinion, kind of fall into this area that we call gray doping. What is gray doping? Gray doping is using things that you don't necessarily need, but you know have a performance enhancing benefit, and they're kind of on the verge of being accepted and not accepted. So what kind of things fall into gray doping? A few things on my list right here. Obviously, asthma inhalers would fall on my list of what I consider to be gray doping. But yes, asthma inhalers are extremely prevalent at the elite level in triathlon, as well as running, swimming. A whole bunch of people, especially at the elite athlete level, don't need an asthma inhaler, and using one definitely improves their performance.
Hard to argue with that one.
I know I'm going to get all kinds of flack. People are going to say, yeah, but that's not me. I have legitimate asthma. Great. Asthma inhalers can really help. There have been athletes who've tested positive for asthma inhalers that are banned even in competition. Lisa Roberts is one of those athletes. Lisa Roberts was one who was sanctioned by USADA for using an asthma inhaler. Depending on what drugs are actually in the inhaler depends on how it can be used, how much can be used, and the method of use, right? Whether you're inhaling it, puffing it, or injecting it would obviously be totally different.
Well, whatever works for you.
So that falls into gray doping. Thyroid medication is another huge part of this. So USA Track and Field kind of came under the spotlight of this. A guy in Houston, Texas, Dr. Jeffrey Brown, is an endocrinologist. He is USA Track and Field's endocrinologist. Super close ties to Alberto Salazar. Dr. Brown became famous when he diagnosed and treated Carl Lewis, who up until this Olympics had the most Olympic medals of any track and field athlete. Carl Lewis was diagnosed by Dr. Jeffrey Brown as having hypothyroidism and was put on thyroid medication and came back and won a bunch more medals. So thyroid medication, let's talk about what it is. So your thyroid obviously regulates your metabolism and produces thyroid hormone. So if you have hypothyroidism, chances are you're probably gaining a lot of weight because your thyroid is not working properly.
I put on a little weight?
So athletes can have low levels of thyroid producing hormone simply because they're training so hard and fatigued. So this is kind of a loophole because it wouldn't be very hard to train really hard, go see a doctor who then says you need thyroid medication. You're given thyroid medication and all of a sudden you can train harder than you could. You can eat more than you normally would be able to because you're metabolizing food faster. So thyroid medication is another big area into gray doping. It is a medication, it is not banned, so it's perfectly legal to use. Obviously it's very dangerous because if you don't need thyroid medication and you take it, your body will stop naturally producing it and you could be forced to take thyroid medication for the rest of your life. So it's something that needs to be taken very seriously. It's not a joke, so just because it's allowed doesn't mean you should use it. It's why it's in my area of gray doping. The other gray doping things that I'll talk about, this one's kind of crazy. It's actually banned now, but it wasn't before, is Xenon. It's nearly impossible to tell, but Xenon doping, like what is that? So Xenon is a gas that's used in manufacturing processes, and people were actually inhaling copious amounts of xenon gas, which then was naturally stimulating red blood cell production. So kind of crazy when you think about that. Xenon doping was really big a few years ago. The other one that's recently banned but still very difficult to test, and so I'm certain is still used, is cobalt. So cobalt is a natural element as well. It's been used in horse racing for a long time. And so you would take cobalt, and again, cobalt is typically paired with thyroid because taking cobalt is shown to naturally reduce your thyroid production. So horse racers have been using cobalt for a long time. It's banned, but cobalt is naturally found in a lot of B vitamins. And so because it's in B vitamins, if you simply say you're taking a B vitamin on your drug test report, then it would be very difficult to bust somebody with extremely high levels of cobalt in their system. So that being said, that's kind of the area of gray doping. Then obviously a lot of people would say, oh, using supplements or creatine or caffeine or anything that's considered a drug would be gray doping. I'm not going to argue or disagree with this.
Well, agree to disagree.
Personally, I use caffeine for training. I use other supplements, primarily whey protein. I've used beta-alanine. I've used creatine phosphate, HMB. I've used several supplements over my career. I believe in supplements. I believe in clean supplements. But I also wholeheartedly believe in nutrition, and I also believe in rules. So let's talk about some doping in the sport of triathlon and what's happened. So I gave you some statistics about who has, how many athletes have been tested by USADA. 4,285 drug tests that USADA has overseen. And of those tests, that has been over 639 athletes. Ironman actually publishes their own rules. So Ironman is a little bit complicated because Ironman is a signatory of WADA, but they manage their own results. So it gets a little bit complicated with them, right? So Ironman can pay for their own testers to go out and test athletes. So Ironman is doing their own results management. They have a list of athletes who have been banned, and there are 28 of them since 2011 when Ironman started doing their own results management. So first in 2011, Timothy Marr was a pro triathlete. I know him very well. He tested positive for amphetamines. Brent Polson, also know him, trained with him. He was tested positive for testosterone. Kevin Moats, age grouper, testosterone. Ivan Albano, EPO. Morgan Chaffin, anabolic steroids. Thomas Willets, EPO. Karine Human, exogenous AAS. Jason Smith, same thing. Lauren Barnett, Beth Gertis, both Osterine. Scott Stevenson, same. Ariane Monticelli, EPO. Lucas Pozzetta, Osterine. Luis Fernando, testosterone and his metabolites. Juan Antonio Gomez Gonzalez, clenbuterol. Flavia Roca, anabolic steroids. Eduardo Solis, anabolic steroids. Pablo Escala, anabolic steroids. Chris Dells, prohibited IV infusion. Same thing Ryan Lochte got in trouble for.
What I was always good at was letting things go through, like through one ear, out the other, so to say.
Daniel Sapunov, EPO. Rodrigo Tavares, anabolic steroids. And Andrew Starkowitz, Wavytrebl, an inhaler he was using. Bad news. So that's all the athletes that Ironman has busted since they started busting them. I would guess that there are hundreds, if not thousands more that are doping, even though this is all they have caught. Doping is prevalent in age group athletes all the way to the top ranks of pros. I would also say each year the top 10 athletes at the Ironman World Championships, we would probably see around 50% of those are using some form of doping, gray doping or straight up black and white doping. USADA has a different list of athletes who have tested positive or been banned by their tests. Michael Meacham, Elizabeth Waterstrat, a couple athletes with their names removed. Amy Dodson, Tyler Hamilton, Mark Freda, Sloan Teeple, Brooke Radcliffe, Robert Radcliffe, Ashley Paulson, Lisa Roberts, and Jenna Blandford all have been sanctioned as a triathlete or competing in triathlons by US Anti-Doping. So these are athletes that it's publicly found. I will post these hyperlinks if you want to see where these are actually found. But the bottom line is doping is happening in the sport, and I would say it happens at a much higher rate than what people are caught. It is a problem. It's not talked about a lot. I know personally as an athlete I was very afraid to speak too much about this while I was actively competing. I'm retired now. I feel a little more freedom to talk about it, but I'm still nervous about it.
They might be listening to us. Who's they?
One case, for instance, that's going on right now, Katie Effin Compton, the winningest female US-based cyclocross racer, just tested positive. She was a huge proponent of drug-free racing. Ended up actually putting her foot in her mouth when she was given a ban recently for 4 years for anabolic steroid use, and that kind of stinks. But that's part of how the whole process works. And I personally believe that as an athlete, if I'd ever tested positive, even knowing 100% that I'm innocent, that I've never taken any performance-enhancing drugs, I know.
Yeah, I know.
That the best decision would probably be to walk away from it, that fighting it is really challenging. But you don't ever know that until you're in that position. And I would say that for every athlete who knows they are guilty and test positive, there are very few athletes that know they're guilty and test positive that will actually ever admit guilt. Lance Armstrong, after years and years and years of denying, finally admitted on the Oprah show about his drug use. And I still don't know if he thinks that was the right decision or if that was a mistake. But that's kind of the state of doping. This is Doping in Triathlon. Thanks for watching. If you have any questions, want to see more content on this subject, let me know. Thanks for watching. That was super long, so.